Hermetic Journeys. I'm your host, Tony G. Hey, if you haven't checked out that subscribe button, check it out. And if you like this video, give it a like. Well, of course, you haven't watched it yet, so hopefully you'll like it. Anyway, we're going to explore Emblem 16 from Atalanta Fugiens today. And Emblem 15, or previous emblem we looked at in the previous video, and Emblem 16 could really be bookends, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, let's take a look at the emblem. In this emblem, we see two lions, okay? A lion and a lioness. Now, the lioness, the female, has wings, while the lion does not have wings. And you'll notice, it's very subtle, sort of. It appears that the lion is holding down or preventing the lioness from flying away with her wings. Now I would like to have the honor of Count Michael Maier himself read the motto and the epigram to us. Take it away, Count Michael.
Why, I should be absolutely delighted, Tony G. Here we go. The feathers one lion has not, the other has.
Okay, so that's a very obvious motto there, Count Michael. Let's see if you're more forthcoming in the epigram.
Yes, we shall, Tony G, but please don't patronize me. Here we go. The lion, the conqueror of the quadrupeds, of a powerful disposition and strong of claws, fights without fear and rejects flight. Let him hold with his paws the winged lioness who flees and wants to take up with her the male lion, but the latter stands on the ground, immovable, and keeps her from flying. May this picture of nature show you the way.
Why, thank you, Count Michael. It truly is a pleasure to have you here at Hermetic Journeys. That does shed some light on the emblem, but it also rings a bell concerning an emblem with a similar theme using different creatures, and that's Emblem 7. And here the motto says,
a young eaglet attempts to fly out of its own nest and falls into it again.
And in an excerpt from the epigram we find,
one of them wanted to rise on its light wings, but was kept back by its brother, a wingless bird.
So I think it's safe to assume that the eagle with wings is the sister, and the wingless eagle is the brother. And what is he doing? He's holding her back. Just like the lions in Emblem 16. The male lion is holding back the female lion who's ready to fly away. Okay, so what's going on here? What is Count Michael telling us with this symbology here? Well, it's a very important alchemical precept. It's known as the fixed and the volatile. The fixed, of course, being the earthbound creature, the lion, all right, or in the case of the eagles, the eagle that has its wings clipped or has no wings, and of course the volatile being the lion with wings and the eagle that wants to fly out of the nest. Remember in the last video we saw how mercury and sulfur had an effect on each other, sort of like yin and yang, right? In fact, we even brought up the very first emblem of Atalanta Fugiens, where it depicted Boreas, the Greek god of the north wind, right, with all the mercury fumes, you know, coming from his hands and his head, all right, and inside his body, in his belly, was an itty bitty teeny weeny little baby, right? Well, that was sulfur, okay? So essentially, sulfur stabilizes the mercury, and mercury volatilizes the sulfur, right? There's a little bit of each other in each other. Ultimately, remember, it's really about yin and yang, if you think of it that way, where the two complementary polarities work together in perfect harmony to bring about something precious. In terms of the alchemical experiment, the goal is the philosopher's stone, of course, but through the balance of sulfur and mercury. Remember, in Emblem 15, the perfect balance of water to clay, the perfect ratio, creates the perfect pot, right? Same thing with the philosopher's stone. The perfect balance of mercury and sulfur creates the philosopher's stone. Now, what's shocking about this is Count Michael actually tells us in the discourse in Emblem 16. I mean, it's incredible, right?
The lion is a symbol of dry, combustible sulfur. The lioness of liquid, volatile mercury. Why on earth did I do this? I must be getting soft in my old age. Oh dear, oh dear.
Well, Count Michael, we're glad you did. I know no system worth its salt lays all its cards on the table, but let's face it, you're not always very forthcoming. It's really hard stuff, which is why I do these videos. So now we're on the right path, right?
Oh, hold on here, one damn minute. We might be on the right path, Tony G. But we have to make sure we have the proper supplies and the proper information. A long time ago, when alchemists wrote about mercury and sulfur, they weren't necessarily talking about mercury and sulfur. Things were not what they seem. Kind of like me, if you know what I mean. But our good friend Steve Kelly, we love you, Steve, here at Hermetic Journeys. He wrote something on social media that really explains this. So let's take a look.
There is a practical and philosophical understanding of these three alchemical essentials. Of course, we know that these are not the chemical substances their name stands for, but were rather used as characteristic attributes and qualities that corresponded to those of their original primordial duality.
So Steve is telling us that although we may find mercury and sulfur mentioned in alchemical texts, and also salt, but we're not talking about that now, all right? Although we may find them in alchemical texts, they are not necessarily speaking directly to the substances mercury and sulfur, but to other substances or concepts that behave similarly. Okay, capiche? Now, for those of you who are Carl Jung fans, like we are here at Hermetic Journeys, this is for you, Carl Jung. You may think of them as archetypes. But where does this come from? Steve will tell us.
So what are the corresponding characteristics, attributes, and qualities which are derived from the original sulfur and metallic mercury? The ancient alchemists studying nature saw that substances that were mixed with sulfur readily burned, and so they referred to sulfur being synonymous with fire, light, and warmth, and gave it the characteristic of the masculine polarity.
So now we know where this concept comes from. But what about mercury? Steve further explains.
They also saw the metallic mercury was able to purify gold by separating it from the ores it was found with, and that it was able to dissolve gold and form amalgams with it, and so they referred to it as a menstruum in the feminine sense, and thus gave it a feminine polarity. They also saw that it was most volatile as it readily evaporates and is able to fly as vapors when heated.
So it appears the mercury-sulfur thing is far more complicated than it seems. But do not worry. Remember to think of them as archetypes. When appropriate, never fear, because we here at Hermetic Journeys will always make that distinction for you when appropriate. This is Dr. Redfez, kissing you hello, kissing you goodbye, kissing Steve Kalik, kissing Carl Jung. We love you all. Okay, take it away, Tony G. Capiche?
So it appears we have to be very careful with how we interpret these alchemical texts, right? And we are very careful. I mean, we try. But it is really complicated, which is why, of course, it's so much fun. You guys will think I'm nuts. Not that I haven't told that before. But there's one more thing I would like to touch on before we end the video, and that is the concept of two lions, right? And that's a very important concept in alchemical texts, as demonstrated in Emblem 16 here. But additionally, in the on the first page, or what's called the frontispiece of Atalanta Fugiens, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, there are two lions. In order to understand what's going on here, we need to retell the story of Atalanta. And as I've told the story in previous versions, I'm going to let one of our old friends tell it to you. Dad, this is for you. So let's say hello to the angry mummy cannon. Yeah, how you doing there? Right, yeah. Well, how are you, old friend?
You mean fiend, don't you? It's just a difference of one letter.
Okay, off to a great start here. Why don't you tell us the story of Atalanta Fugiens?
I'd rather tell the story of how you suddenly disappeared and left me and the audience alone.
Okay, well, I can take a hint.
Obviously you can't, because you're still here.
Okay.
So while that windbag is gone, let me tell you the story of Atalanta Fugiens. Atalanta was a huntress who spent her days frolicking around the forests of ancient Greece. Her father, who was a king, felt she was being frivolous with her life.
You're being frivolous, Atalanta. Now.
And eventually insisted she settle down and get married. How boring. But Atalanta didn't want to marry, as she enjoyed her carefree life of hunting, killing, and maiming poor little defenseless animals, and outrunning the stupid hunters in the forest. You know, I think I'm really beginning to like this Atalanta. Atalanta proposed to her father that she would marry the man that could beat her in a race, but on one condition, that if she wins, the challenger is executed. Now, Atalanta was the fastest runner in all of Greece and knew no one could beat her. I really do like this Atalanta. Now, a man named Hippomenes, who was not as much of an idiot as the other idiots who fell in love with Atalanta, was wandering through the forest, caught a glimpse of her, and, like all the other imbeciles, fell madly in love with her. But like I said, Hippomenes, who was not as much of an idiot as the other idiots, realized that once he saw the trail of bodies left by those half-wits who thought they could outrun Atalanta, decided to consult Aphrodite, the goddess of love, to beat Atalanta. Aphrodite came up with a plan and instructed Hippomenes to carry 3 golden apples during the race and to drop each of the golden apples at intervals as he ran. Aphrodite believed Atalanta would stop it to admire the apple and then pick them up, delaying her and giving Hippomenes an advantage. So Hippomenes runs with it, get it? And dropped the 3 golden apples to slow Atalanta down, winning the race and the hand of Atalanta. Oh yeah, he also won the rest of her body. Now this sounds like a happy ending to a very weird story, but it's not. Which is why I'm so glad to recite it to you, because the ending is gloriously horrible. So this is the good part. Hippomenes neglects to thank Aphrodite for her brilliant plan and the golden apples. And being the goddess of love, well, Aphrodite puts a whammy on he and Atalanta, who, being suddenly consumed with lust, consummate their marriage in the nearest building. Sadly, all of the Motel 6s in ancient Greece were booked, so these idiots picked the temple. Unfortunately for them, the temple of choice was a sacred temple, which the 2 nitwits defiled with their lust and managed to successfully piss off Sybil, the temple's goddess. Sybil was so infuriated, she turned them into lions that were condemned to pull her chariot for all eternity. What imbeciles! Don't you think? Man, I just love this story. Yeah, whatever.
Well, wasn't that charming? Yeah, well, thank you, Angry Mummy Candle, for that lovely rendition of that story. Well, anyway, the reason we had that story retold was to familiarize you with the concept of what happens with these 2 lions. And Count Michael reveals something rather profound in the introduction to the book here.
She, Atalanta, with mercurial swiftness is endued, which yields by sulphur's prudent strength pursued. That's Hippomenes, of course.
And my pal, Count Michael, further clarifies and further reveals more symbology.
From Hippomenes and Atalanta lying together in the temple of the Mother of the Gods, that is a vessel, by the way, are lions produced, or they acquire a red color. See?
And so we have Atalanta as Mercury, Hippomenes as sulfur, conjoined, if you will, within the temple, which represents an alchemical vessel. Okay, that's cool, right? And they take on a red color. Of course, the red color represents the Philosopher's Stone. That's how we know. Now, one other thing, and we'll tie this up with a neat little bow before we go, and that is where you see 2 lions represented in alchemical texts and emblems and things like that. It is a symbol for the Philosopher's Stone, and beautifully depicted by Matthias Marion.
Why, thank you, dear sir.
Anyway, so and that's about it for this particular video. I thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. All right. Thank you so very much for watching. I will say farewell, but not goodbye. And I'll see you next time with Emblem 18. Wow, we're really getting somewhere. No, 17. Sorry. I am getting old. Thank you.